Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of The Pursuit of Truth. And I have an amazing guest tonight. Her name is Isla. I'm so excited to do this podcast, video podcast. And she is from the new federal state of China. There's so much information that we're going to be talking about tonight, and I'm so excited that everyone will get to hear this show because it's crazy. The stuff we're talking about is crazy. And just be ready to hear all this new information. So, hi, Isla, how are you?
Violet, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Yes, thank you. Can you talk about a little bit, about NF, NFSC and
Yeah,
what it stands for, what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the new federal state of China is funded on June the 4th, 2020 by Mr. Miles Guo. Mr. Miles Guo started a whistleblower movement in whistleblowing and revealing the evil nature and secrets of the Chinese Communist Party since 2017. And so
Wow.
3 years, 3 years later, during the pandemic the Chinese Communist Party's virus, also known as the COVID-19 virus, Mr. Guo and the co-founder, Mr. Steve K. Bannon, funded the new federal state of China together.
Wow.
Mr. Guo specifically chose June the 4th because it was, the date of the Tiananmen massacre in 1989. So that being said, the sole mission and our primary mission of the new federal state of China is to take down the current Chinese regime, and that is the Chinese Communist Party.
And you mentioned Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has been a great patriot for the nation of the US. And you know what happened to him recently. It's very sad. And there's no concrete evidence against him, but they just want to put him in jail. And they want to put him in jail because he's a great voice here in America. So can you give us a comment about that?
Sure. I think we're highly appreciative of Mr. Bannon's efforts in helping the new federal state of China and expressing the world, against the Chinese Communist Party. However, NFSC has a very clear principle that we will not get involved into any domestic politics of the United States,
Yeah.
and we will not, comment on any U.S. politicians. Our stance has been very clear. The primary goal was to take down the Chinese Communist Party. Any efforts that are targeting to reveal the truth of the CCP will be highly appreciated.
Yeah, and you know what the crazy thing is, Ayla, that a lot of Americans are not aware of how China has infiltrated themselves here in the US. They don't know how they've infiltrated in different areas and how they've been using our technology. So I want you to talk about this because I have a very important, very important subject that I want to talk to you about, but I want to hear first, how are they infiltrated here in the US?
Right. So if if we want to look at campus, right, you look
Hmm.
how much donation was actually coming from CCP's businesses and proxies and agents. There are libraries named after Chinese businessmen. There are, gardens named after CCP's, secret mistress. All these fundings are leading to a certain level of power and control from the Chinese government over the campus. In fact, I'll give you several examples, right? If you look
Yeah.
at University of Pennsylvania, if you look at Harvard,
Hmm.
these schools are renowned for holding Chinese, China America business talks every single year. They would be able to invite CCP ambassadors from Washington, from New York to their campus. They would be able to gather, Chinese, businessmen and representatives from Chinese capital ventures to these
Yeah.
campuses to do hirings and to do job hunting for their, students as well. So all these type of events are highly linked with CCP's efforts and coordination. On the other hand,
Wow.
if you look
Wow.
at MIT.
Ayla, before we
Mhm.
keep going with this is, actually, I want to give you my college experience. When I was in college, I went to Christian college, right? Obviously, I'm Hispanic. I moved to the US to go to university. I was going to go into law school. But the interesting thing is that, I studied about Karl Marx when I was in high school, and I knew what capitalism was, socialism, communism. And, Karl Marx was the one that wrote the foundation of communism. And there were a lot of classes that I just had where I was seeing how professors were pushing a communist, a socialist agenda into our generation. So, what you're talking about is obviously not a conspiracy theory. I always tell people, you want to know how we're being manipulated, you want to know who's controlling things, just follow the money trail. And the fact
Hmm.
that you said that there's a lot of businessmen that are paying professors in this universities, that are paying for libraries, it just opens up your mind. And it's so obvious that they have an agenda just by investing in US universities.
Absolutely. And I will say that CCP strategies of taking over and infiltrating into our campuses are beyond just controlling what was being taught. I'll give you an example from MIT. People
Yeah.
love to talk about the fentanyl crisis here in the United States and how
Yeah.
the Chinese Communist government is actually behind all these fentanyl crises. In fact, that the finding and the production of fentanyl was actually originating from a Chinese American professor in MIT, and his last name is Tao Cao. So when he first found fentanyl in the United States, he rapidly reported his findings to the Chinese Communist government
Hmm.
and named it and recommended fentanyl as a national strategy for the Chinese Communist government. And
Yeah.
it was since the MIT Chinese American professor that the CCP established a biochemical weapon lab in Nanking City in mainland China and
Wow.
started the production of fentanyl. So, I'll give you, examples. In China, it is very
Fentanyl
hard.
is highly dangerous. And
Mhm.
we've heard so many cases of just the minimum amount it can kill you.
Yeah,
People have
yeah.
no idea what they're doing and why was it created. Now we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in China, if you go to post office and try to
Yeah.
send and mail to overseas, you are not allowed to mail any of food, right? Because the custom will reject
Hmm.
your mails. You're not allowed to, wire or send out any alcohols. However,
Yeah.
if you send out fentanyls, it will pass through the Chinese custom easily. So this is
Yeah.
how, the
Huh.
CCP had treated fentanyl as a national strategy.
Wow. And you know what happened recently just blew up my mind because when I heard about this, I was like, we are controlled. They can shut us down here in this country at any time. And please talk to me about what happened in Baltimore recently. This happened, I believe, yeah, in March 30. I was amazed and I was like, I had no idea until I went to your website and learned from it. Why? Because you're trying to hide this information from us. You're not putting it in the newspaper. It's obviously being removed from social media. They're removing the information that's actually truth and they're putting lies out there. So, can you talk about what happened with the bridge attack?
Yeah, absolutely. So people tend to believe that it is by accident, right? The ship, hit into the Baltimore Bridge, and then it went into a huge collapse and caused, huge losses for the Baltimore city as well. Uh, the truth is that if you look at the significance of that bridge in military and in history, you understand that, the majority of military logistics actually went through the
Yeah.
bridge and went through the port, and lots of the economy job market was linked to that bridge as well. And so I'll introduce you to how mature that the CCP's traction technology is. In fact, that in the past, the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government already mastered a remote traction technology, meaning that they
Wow.
can control your computer, your elevator, your flight, your train, your subway, any of these ships or yachts, as long as you have a central computer at any time.
I'm
So
sorry
I'll
for
give you.
interrupting, Ayla, but
Mhm.
we are allowing this in the US, right? We're allowing this. We're saying, hey, here is our technology, here's our iPad phones. You can come and use it, right?
Well, exactly. I think there has been much exchange between Chinese Communist Party and the United States in terms of technology, information, and data. Even, in fact, today that the technology of the firewall was actually supported by the United States.
Yeah.
The Chinese Communist Party does not have the ability to build up the firewall. All of these technology
Oh.
were brought from Microsoft, from Bill Gates.
And where are the Microsoft headquarters?
Right here in the United States, right? Silicon
Yeah.
Valley.
Yeah. And which is, well, actually, no. Recently, I know that Microsoft was not working. It was about 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
And then I read this whole history of what they had. They had their headquarters or their system software, it was in Ukraine. So
Mm.
I was like, there's a lot of things here that don't add up. But anyways, I'm just amazed that everything is opened to China and the US is not doing anything about it. And I'm just thinking this is a big threat, obviously. But let's talk about Venezuela recently. And I want to talk about Venezuela because you have experience, you know how China works, you've seen things in China that we haven't seen here in the US. And I want to hear first, before speaking about Venezuela, I want to hear your personal experience. What have you experienced in China that was mind blowing when you moved here to the US? And just like you, Ayla, I am Hispanic. I come from a South American country. And I tell Americans, you do not know the truth unless you've lived somewhere else, unless you experience a different government. And Americans don't know how good they have it, Ayla. They don't. And I believe that we have, we're entitled now. And we just feel like we deserve it all. And we are blind here in America. We're blind to what other countries are facing. So I want to hear your personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of my shocking travel experience in China is that I traveled to Xinjiang in one of the summer breaks I have while I was in
Yeah.
college. I was able to fly into Xinjiang, and then when I was with a local tour guide, we actually drove passing by a huge campus. At that time, I had no idea it was actually the Xinjiang concentration camp, and so I asked the
Oh,
local tour guide. I said,
explain to Americans what is this concentration camp, please.
right. So the Xinjiang concentration camp is established by the Chinese Communist Party in the
Mhm.
name of re-educating the Uyghurs, the minorities, in Xinjiang province. In history, Uyghurs are very opposing against the Chinese Communist government, and this was primarily why CCP established the Xinjiang camp, to eliminate their freedom of religious belief. And they actually arrest the family. They arrest the entire family. So if you're very outspoken in your family against the
Yeah.
CCP and you happen to be a Uyghur, they do not just arrest you, they arrest the entire family, your children, your parents, your husband. And so by arresting, millions of Uyghur families, the Xinjiang concentration camp still exists today.
Wow. You hear about concentration camps happening back in the 1940s. And when you hear that this is happening now in 2024, it's just mind blowing. And I'm just like, okay, this is happening now. We're supposed to live in a world where we are expanding freedom, where it's globalist. But no, if you have a different view, if you have a different religion, and you go against your government, you're sent to a concentration camp. Wow,
Exactly.
Ayla. Honestly, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. I knew some things about China, but I didn't know that they were going into this extreme.
Yeah,
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 so your
exactly.
experience, we're back to your experience.
Right. So when I traveled in Xinjiang, it was a very accidental experience. The
Yeah,
local tour guide drove me and other friends passing by the Xinjiang concentration camp. There was not a title of where, what the campus is. It looks like a huge college campus. They have
yeah.
all of these gates outside, and there was no name. You couldn't see any police over there. So I was very curious because I saw campus buildings inside. I saw dorms. I saw hospitals. I
Hmm.
also saw, some kind of like academic buildings inside. So I asked the local tour guide. I said that, which building is it and why is it so huge? Because I can't tell how large it is behind a gate. And the local tour
Oh,
guide told me that it was called re-education camp for the Uyghurs. So I asked the local tour guide if he has any
like
idea.
brainwashing. It's
Yeah,
brainwashing.
of how big the population is, are currently living in the concentration camp. He said he was not sure. He said he believed it was over millions, and he was aware. He
Wow.
said that local people were aware. There were international reporters trying to fly in Xinjiang and trying to document the Xinjiang concentration camp. So, with facing international pressure, CCP started to release some of the arrested Xinjiang Uyghurs in the past several years. However, they were still being mistreated by the government, meaning that even though some of the Uyghurs would be able to be released from the Xinjiang concentration camp, they're still required to carry 24/7 monitor devices on their body. And the Chinese Communist Party government has the right to call you at any time. And if you don't pick up the phone from the government, you are about to be sent back to the Xinjiang concentration camp. And even if you are not arrested, and you're just a Uyghur, in your village, in some of the rural village where Uyghurs are the majority of the population, the Chinese Communist
Hmm.
government required them to wake up at a certain time every day and then to sing the national anthem of the CCP, and that being, a patriotic education, a daily education, a brainwash, a process for them. And many of the Uyghurs found it very difficult to find a decent living in Xinjiang because they were always being sent to very low paid jobs, and they were sent to very rural areas where population is less, and job market is very is shrinking every year. And
Wow.
so that shocked me a lot. And even when I traveled in the city of Xinjiang, in Urumqi and or other cities, it was required for you to go through security checks, even if you are buying a burger in KFC. So
Yeah.
when I stepped into KFC, there are policemen. People ask to do a security check. You have to open your bags and show every item you have. And you could only order after you pass through security checks. And this happened, in the 21st century.
Okay. I just want to tell everyone right now, everything that you're telling me would be mind blowing to an American or European, actually anybody who has lived outside of communist regimes. But when I hear this, I just want you to think, can you uh, see the amount of control that happens in China and just becoming an ally or letting them um, get our information, it means that we are in their same side if we're not fighting against this. And the controlling of citizens, this creates violence, the brainwashing, the fact that they don't have liberties, they don't have freedom of speech. This is not a normal thing. So this goes against democracy. I believe in democracy. I believe that citizens should have a voice. I believe that citizens should elect their president, their leader, their prime minister, etc. And when I hear this, it just means it equals oppression. It equals that you have no rights as a human being. This goes against your human rights. And Ayla, I'm just amazed at everything that I'm listening to. And I really hope that when people listen to this, they wake up and they see the reality of the the way the world is running, right? And I want to talk about what happened in Venezuela because Venezuela has a similar government, and you know what they faced recently in their election. Like, I'm Hispanic, and that whenever I see a Venezuelan, it breaks my heart the way that they speak about their country. They're separated. Family members are here. Half of their family are back in Venezuela. The fact that they don't have groceries or that the country has a crazy inflation, it's heartbreaking. But I want to hear your thoughts on Venezuela.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Venezuela people have established a good example of fighting for their own freedom and rights, right? In fact, that I think it will inspire lots of the Chinese people, and it
Yeah.
was a perfect demonstration of how to peacefully protest against a totalitarian regime, and that eventually people will win, and people will have the right to choose and to elect the president that they want. And so I think in fact that Mr. Miles Guo, our founder, had said in his previous broadcast before, he believed that Venezuela will become an inspiring example for all of the Chinese people, and he thinks that based on the world politics, and all of these dynamics, the Chinese Communist Party will be the next one. So eventually, one day, Chinese people will go on the streets and oppose against the totalitarian CCP regime, and then we will establish our own democracy and rule of law.
And something, Ayla, that I want us to focus on is that these things that happen in countries like China or Venezuela, they don't happen from one day to another. They
Hmm.
happen throughout time, and it
Hmm.
goes little by little to a point that you don't realize that you're living in a communist totalitarian government. So it comes to a point where suddenly you wake up and you're like, wait, this is not normal. And it had, 5 years go on, 10 years go on, and you don't realize how controlled you are. And now trying to make that country free becomes harder. So I want you to tell viewers tonight, what can we do to prevent totalitarian communist regimes such as China and Venezuela?
Absolutely. I would first say saying decouple with the Chinese Communist Party, right? Don't accept any funding from the Chinese Communist government. It is very important. You look at Venezuela, lots of the donations coming out from the Chinese government to Venezuela. In
And
fact, that
Iran.
CCP, yeah, in fact, that CCP is the largest donors in all over the
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
And CCP was also able to establish military bases and monitor devices in Venezuela in opposing against the West and stalking information of the United States. So the true point is that if you don't, if you want to oppose against the dictatorship, don't accept any fundings from a current
Yeah.
dictator. And that I think
Yeah.
that that's the first
It's
point.
it's like negotiating with terrorists. So
Mhm.
the fact that you are able or you're willing to negotiate with a terrorist or a dictator by telling them, okay, give us your donations and then you could do whatever you want here in our country, that just shows you that you're becoming an ally, period.
Exactly.
So let's be scared if we're receiving donations from China.
Yeah, exactly. I would absolutely say that cut ties with the Chinese Communist Party, investigate on CCP's officials' secret assets outside, overseas, right? You look at New York City, New York, right? Lots of the luxury mansions were actually owned by the Chinese Communist Party's officials and their family members,
Hmm.
their children, and their proxies. You look
Yeah.
at Beverly Hills, many of these luxury mansions, penthouses were owned by the CCP, even in the 1980s. So
Wow.
so this is not happening just now. This is not happening because of the development of the Chinese economy. This
Hmm.
happened when Chinese people in 1989 suffered and died on Tiananmen Square, that the Chinese Communist Party already purchased their illegal assets overseas. So all of the government, if you really want to know more about the Chinese Communist Party, if you want to prevent the infiltration from a communist regime into your country, look after and look, go search, go investigate against the CCP's officials families, their secret child, their secret and illegal overseas assets, have these seized and have them bring it back to the Chinese people. I think that will solve all of the problems.
Yes. How can they look you up? How can they look up your organization?
Absolutely. So the new federal state of China is available on our own website, nfscofficial.com. You could always find us on NFSC TV or NFSC Speaks.
Yeah.
We're very popular on Getter, X, Instagram. So follow us. And
Yeah.
we're also, lots of Mr. Guo's past videos also went very viral on YouTube as well.
Okay. We will be tagging you in social media, but thank you so much for the information. It has been astounding just to learn so much. I knew a few things, but the fact that you are from China and you have the experience, you work with an organization that is going against communist China says it all. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for informing everyone of this. We really have to stand for freedom and we have to stand for the truth and go against governments that are going to be oppressive. So thank you so much and thank you for tuning in into the pursuit of truth.